It starts with the glint of polished metal under racing lights and the growl of an engine that sounds more like a symphony than machinery. An era when machines weren't just built, they were crafted to conquer. Picture a motorcycle so precise in its execution that it blurred the line between production and prototype, leaving rivals scrambling to keep pace. Think of a time when regulations forced manufacturers to sell what they raced, creating rare machines that balanced on the knife's edge between street legality and track dominance. Behind the fairings lay secrets of engineering brilliance, exotic materials, innovative layouts, and the kind of obsessive attention to detail usually reserved for works of art. The stakes weren't just trophies, they were reputations, markets, and the loyalty of riders who demanded more than speed alone. This story is about one of those machines, the kind that didn't just compete, but defined an entire generation of racing legends. Before we dive into its origins, rise, and enduring legacy, take a second to like, subscribe, and drop a comment with the next machine you want us to explore. The Honda RC30 arrived in 1987 as a homologation special, a motorcycle that existed because racing rules required manufacturers to sell road-going versions of their track weapons. From its very first appearance, the RC30 was unlike anything else a consumer could buy. Hand-assembled in Honda's race shop, fitted with components that seemed absurdly advanced for a road bike, and priced well above most riders' reach. Its creation was not about filling dealerships with volume, but about ensuring Honda had the right tool to win in the newly established World Superbike Championship and an endurance racing series worldwide. To understand why this mattered, we have to look at the context of the mid-1980s. Motorcycling was changing rapidly, consumer demand was strong, but racing regulations were tightening, and manufacturers were being pushed to prove that their exotic technologies could exist in production form. Honda decided to go all in, creating the RC30 with an uncompromising focus on performance, even if that meant only a small number of bikes would ever leave the factory. The RC30's V4 engine used gear-driven cams instead of chains, a choice that ensured precise timing at high RPM and gave the bike its distinctive mechanical whine. Its lightweight aluminum frame was designed with racetrack agility in mind, and the single-sided swing arm, rare at the time, was engineered not for looks, but to allow for quicker wheel changes during endurance races. These weren't marketing gimmicks. They were deliberate decisions that tied directly to racing success. Yet for buyers lucky enough to get one, these features translated into a riding experience that felt closer to a factory race bike than anything on the street. But exclusivity came with a cost. The RC30's price tag was more than double that of many other superbikes of the era, and for everyday riders it was an impractical purchase, temperamental in traffic, happiest only at high RPM and demanding constant attention. Honda wasn't trying to appeal to casual buyers. They were building a machine for a specific purpose, and enthusiasts who bought one became part of an elite circle, owning a piece of engineering history. The cultural impact was immediate. Magazines raved about the RC30's precision, racers lined up to compete on it, and even among rival manufacturers, respect for the machine was undeniable. Every element of the RC30 was born from a deliberate trade-off: performance over comfort, exclusivity over accessibility, and racing results over sales numbers. This was the DNA of a motorcycle built to win. As we move forward, the next stage of the story isn't just about how the RC30 was designed, but how it performed once it hit the racetrack, and why those victories elevated it from an impressive motorcycle to a true legend. When the Honda RC30 hit the track, its reputation was forged not in brochures or showrooms, but in the crucible of competition. Almost immediately, the RC30 proved itself as the dominant force in the fledgling World Superbike Championship, with Fred Merkel clinching back-to-back titles in 1988 and 1989. That wasn't luck. It was the direct result of a motorcycle engineered to turn racing regulations into advantages. The gear-driven V4 pulled hard across the rev range, the chassis responded with surgical precision, and the single-sided swing arm gave teams the edge in endurance races where every second counted during pit stops. Beyond the World Championship, the RC30 also crushed in road racing, most famously at the Isle of Man TT, where riders like Steve Hyslop and Carl Fogarty demonstrated its unmatched capability over the most dangerous race course on Earth. For rivals, the RC30 was infuriating. It wasn't just another bike on the grid, it was the benchmark, forcing other manufacturers to pour resources into creating countermeasures. In endurance racing, the RC30 became the go-to machine, conquering events like the Suzuka 8 Hours and long-distance European races where consistency and speed mattered more than outright bursts of power. Owners who took theirs from showroom to club racing discovered the same thing. It wasn't forgiving or easy, but in the right hands, it was nearly unstoppable. Market reception in the US was more complicated. While enthusiasts admired the RC30, its high cost and limited availability meant only a handful of riders ever saw one in person, let alone owned it. This scarcity only added to its mystique, transforming it into a sort of forbidden fruit in the American superbike scene. Meanwhile, tuners and aftermarket shops quickly learned how much potential lay in the platform, squeezing even more power and refining handling to tailor the machine for different racing disciplines. By the early 1990s, the RC30 wasn't just a motorcycle. It was a symbol of what could happen when a company put victory above sales volume, when engineering trumped compromise. But the true question isn't only how much it won, it's why those victories mattered, and how they changed the trajectory of racing and performance motorcycles as a whole. That's where the RC30's legacy comes into sharp focus. The Honda RC30's legacy goes far beyond the trophies it collected. It reshaped the way manufacturers approached racing and the machines they built for the street. Within just a few seasons, the RC30 forced rivals to realize that simply modifying existing production bikes was no longer enough. They needed purpose-built homologation specials if they wanted to stay competitive. That shift echoed across the sport, leading to an entire generation of legendary machines that followed the RC30's template. But while others copied the idea, none quite matched the purity of Honda's execution. The RC30 wasn't designed with mass-market compromise. It was built in an era when winning justified the means, and when the rules still allowed engineers to push boundaries that later regulations would tighten. For enthusiasts today, the Honda RC30 remains one of the most collectible motorcycles of the late 20th century, not just for its rarity, but for what it represents, the moment when technology, regulation, and ambition collided to create something extraordinary. Collectors in the US treat surviving examples like blue-chip investments, while riders who manage to experience one on the road or track often describe it as unlike any other machine they've ridden, demanding, precise, and deeply rewarding. The RC30 also stands as a blueprint, showing how engineering choices made in pursuit of competition can create ripples that shape the entire industry. It's the reason why modern superbikes with exotic materials, aggressive geometry, and track-derived technology feel normal today. They owe their existence to the precedent set by Honda's decision in 1987. The RC30 may no longer line up on starting grids, but its spirit lives on in every racing replica and in the expectation that performance bikes should always be more than just fast. They should be uncompromising. That's the enduring power of the Honda RC30. It taught the world what a racing motorcycle could be, and its influence continues to echo every time a rider swings a leg over a superbike built with the same DNA. The Honda RC30 is remembered today not only for its remarkable victories, but for how it redefined what a production-based racing motorcycle could be. For US viewers, the story carries a particular weight because the RC30 was both a marvel and a rarity, imported in limited numbers, priced well beyond the reach of average riders, and often sold directly to those with racing ambitions rather than casual enthusiasts. That exclusivity made it almost mythical in American motorcycling circles, a machine more often read about in magazines than spotted on the streets. For those who did manage to own one, the RC30 delivered an experience unlike anything else. Sharp handling, a ferocious but precise V4, and a visceral connection to Honda's factory racing program. Ownership today is far more complex. Surviving examples trade at collector-level prices, often six figures, with pristine bikes commanding even more. Parts are scarce and maintenance requires specialized knowledge. Gear-driven cams and hand-assembled components demand the kind of care that most modern dealerships aren't accustomed to providing. Yet the reliability, when cared for properly, remains impressive. The RC30 wasn't fragile. It was built to endure grueling endurance races. But time, scarcity, and rising values mean most owners now treat theirs as prized artifacts rather than daily riders. For enthusiasts considering one today, the reality is that it's less about performance against modern superbikes and more about connection to a pivotal era in motorcycle history. It represents the moment when racing ambitions justified the creation of machines that blurred the line between road and track, and when the US market got a rare glimpse of engineering without compromise. In the end, The Honda RC30's greatest legacy isn't just its titles or its engineering tricks. It's the way it set a new expectation for what a race-bred motorcycle should feel like, and the reverence it continues to inspire among riders and collectors decades later. If there's one thing to take away, it's this. The RC30 proved that when a machine is built with a singular purpose and no concessions, it doesn't just win races, it becomes immortal.